Okay, do you want to make a start? I think we're recording.
I begin by welcoming you all to this meeting of the Works International Network, which is a network of workers' organisations across the world. And tonight's discussion is about the global climate disaster that we're actually experiencing, as well as expecting it to get worse. We're meeting at the same time as COP28 in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, where 200 countries are involved with the cooperation of the United Nations Committee on Climate Change. We don't have too many hopes from COP28, because if you cast our minds back to COP27, where we had the Paris Agreement, and the Paris Agreement said that global temperatures shouldn't rise by more than 1.5%. If present policies continue, as is happening in the world, the rise would be 3 degrees. Sorry, I said percent, 1.5 degrees. The rise would be 3 degrees if we continue with present policies on a global scale. It's worth noting also that the United Arab Emirates, where this COP28 is taking place, its state-owned oil company has made the largest expansion and the largest investment of any company in the world in its exploration for oil and the quest to improve profits. There's a ceaseless increase in emissions. Decarbonisation targets are being set back as there's scaled up extraction of fossil fuels, and companies are ignoring the warnings that are coming from climate scientists. Now, climate change is the overriding challenge that faces humanity in this century. We should note also that climate change creates devastation amongst the poorer people in the world. The world's poorest people are suffering most from climate change. If you remember the floods in Pakistan, the worst drought in Africa for 40 years, the springtime heat wave in Brazil. So the Paris Agreement set targets, but did not provide any funds or planned investment to achieve these targets, because, as will emerge in the discussion, the capitalist system is concerned principally about making profits for their shareholders and not with global targets. Now, today the discussion will focus around a campaign that's called Leave It in the Ground, which involves ecology groups in a number of countries, such as Turkey, Greece, and Cyprus. I hope I get this right, but our two speakers are Sigdem and Ichaham. How wrong was I with that pronunciation?
Good.
Is it okay?
Crocus, yeah.
Okay. So we're privileged to have two speakers on this campaign, Leave It in the Ground, and they belong to an organization called Kazma Bırak. So I look forward to the discussion. Now, comrades can make any contribution or ask any questions they wish following the opening contributions from our two speakers. So in terms of time, how much time between you do you think you might need, roughly?
10 to 15 minutes each, please.
Okay, so we'll say 10 to 15 minutes each. So after 10 minutes, I'll give a kind of an indication that you've 5 minutes left. And following both contributions, then, like I said, there'll be time for questions, contributions, and debate, because there isn't always unanimity on these questions. So we'll begin then with Sigdem. Do you want to begin, or does no? You can begin. Okay. So you can start now.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Çiğdem and me are from Turkish coordination of the campaign, Kazma Bırak. But we have Vera and Kyriakos here, and they're from Greek coordination of the same campaign. I'm sure that they also have lots to say to us, and we will try to give them a room during this speech. Actually, I'm gonna talk about the background of the issue, which is mainly Turkish-Greek tensions. And after that, I will give the floor to Çiğdem to talk about the campaign in a more detailed and more concrete way. So actually, the trigger for this campaign is the fossil fuel extraction activities in the Eastern Mediterranean. But there are much deeper historical issues behind this. I mean, behind the military tensions between Greece and Turkey, especially around 2019 and 2020. I want to touch upon them. And at this point, we can talk about the devil's triangle between the states of Cyprus, Greece, and Turkey. And geographically and historically, they cannot be separated from each other, nor can they be friends. And like geographies, peoples are also intertwined. And however, despite all the efforts of the states, it is difficult to say that the peoples have this kind of enmity between, like in Greece and Turkish states. Well, towards the end of the 20th century, the Eastern Mediterranean regained importance in international politics. And the reason for this shift towards the Eastern Mediterranean is mainly based on data released by the United States Geological Survey. And according to the data in question, it's estimated that there are approximately 1.7 billion barrels of oil and 3.5 trillion cubic meters of natural gas reserves in the sea in the Eastern Mediterranean region, which makes Mediterranean Sea as a new El Dorado Gulf. And all countries in question, I mean, the Cyprus, Greece, and Turkey, claim natural gas as a rightful resource, and they framed it as a gift from nature or a divine endowment that will bring prosperity. And here we see very clearly that even the activists, including the Cypriot leftists especially, have succumbed to ecological destruction in the face of promises of prosperity for the people. I mean, they said it will give economical development, especially to Cyprus, and it was almost the same in Turkey. The President Erdogan always said that we found gas in Eastern Mediterranean and Black Sea, and we will be rich. We will be the richest country in the world. Blah blah. And this discourse is kind of obstacle against leftists to convince people that the ecological destruction is much important than the ecological economical development of the country. I mean, but beneath this rhetoric, there lies the historical pattern of conflicts between Turkey and Greece especially. And the most important one is the Cyprus issue. And it's in the middle of the triangle. There is a historical issue as Cyprus, which is very important. It's a significant flashpoint in the ongoing tensions between Turkey and Greece. And the historical background of the Cyprus conflict is deeply intertwined with the broader rivalry of the Turkish-Greek states. Turkey's occupation and resettlement policy in Cyprus, which aims to Turkify the island, and the actions of Greece EOKA, on the other hand, are mutual efforts of the two states to polarize the two communities along nationalist lines. And you know, Turkey's military intervention in Cyprus in 974, following by a coup by pro-Greek forces, resulted in the de facto division of the island and the establishment of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, recognized only by Turkey, by the way, and the subsequent population movements have been contentious issues. Turkey's settlement policy involving the migration of Turkish citizens to the northern part of the Cyprus has aimed at altering the demographic balance of the island. And much more could be said about the Cyprus issue, but I think it should be a topic for another Sunday chat. But the tension between these three countries is exacerbated by the broader ecological crisis and geopolitical shifts starting from 2000s and going on. And the energy crisis, intensified by the war in Ukraine, is a peak point that has led to a surge in oil, gas, and electricity prices. And the focus on energy security has overshadowed environmental concerns. And with countries in the Eastern Mediterranean restarting oil and gas exploration. And the EastMed pipeline is one and most important of them, I believe. What is EastMed? Please let me explain. It's a proposed natural gas pipeline project intended to transport natural gas from the Eastern Mediterranean to Europe, to Italy. And the key players in this project include Cyprus, Greece, and Israel. And it is designed to enhance region's energy security and contribute to European energy diversification, quote unquote. And the EastMed pipeline would be the deepest and longest pipeline in the world and would run from the Levantine basin to Italy and across from Cyprus, Greece, then Italy. And the construction of this pipeline would certainly be a separate and highly significant ecocide crime. And the EastMed pipeline's future remains uncertain, but it seems it has been shelved for a while with discussions about gas supply routes and new alliances. And I should add that there were almost all of the oil companies that we know, like Shell, ExxonMobil, etc. I don't remember their names now, but they were all in the Eastern Mediterranean, and they were all started to bargain with the countries like Greece, Italy, Israel, and Cyprus, and Cyprus Republic. So, and they were planning to construct LNG terminals in various locations, and it was also an environmental risk, and it has potential economic consequences for areas dependent on tourism and fishing, which is Cyprus. Actually, Cyprus is mainly based on the tourism and fishing, and those EastMed pipeline and LNG terminals across the pipeline would kill the economic life of the Cyprus at all. Now it's like, you know, as I said, it has been shelved, but since it seems too expensive, but we don't know when they're going to start again, and we are trying to be, you know, we are trying to open our eyes and watch the moves of the companies and states around Eastern Mediterranean Sea. And I should also say a few words about the role of Russia in Eastern Mediterranean, I mean, generally Mediterranean, in between. And the notion that Russia seeks dominance in the Mediterranean is evident through various indicators. And one significant manifestation of this ambition is Russia's active role in the Syrian conflict. And another one is the construction of a nuclear power plant at the southernmost point of Turkey, Akkuyu nuclear power plant, and which is very close to Cyprus. And the initiation of a similar project at the northernmost point of Egypt, near El Daba. So the Akkuyu nuclear power plant is Russia's. It's not Turkish. It's all Russia's for another 50 years or something, 49 years. So they declared that actually we are not building that power plant for Turkey. We are building it for our own interests as Russia. They said that, they declared that, and it's the same with the Egypt. And Russia is also trying to be part of the, pie of Eastern Mediterranean oil.
I'm sorry, Isham, you've been talking for about 10 minutes now. Okay, continue.
Okay, thank you. And those are indicative of Russia's economic and geopolitical interests in the Mediterranean. And these nuclear energy initiatives not only enhance Russia's presence in the region, but also contribute to its economical influence around the Mediterranean countries. In conclusion, to conclude, the recent escalation in tensions between Turkey and Greece is not solely about natural gas, but it's intertwined with historical disputes, geopolitical shifts, and environmental concerns. A collective response from the people, transcending nationalist narratives, becomes crucial in the face of the intertwined challenges of extraction, militarization, and ecological degradation, or ecocide. And that's how we decided to organize a campaign against drillings of Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, with the comrades mainly from Cyprus and Greece, but not limited with them. Now I'm giving the floor to Çiğdem to continue.
Thank you very much, Isham. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Çiğdem, do you mind? Do you want me to remind you after 10 minutes? You have 15 to speak.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
So, okay.
You hear me clearly? Yes. No problem with my sound? Good. I would like to thank you all for inviting us, and you gave us a chance to strengthen the relations on an international level. I will tell you a short story about the Don't Dig campaign. The international campaign started in September 2020 with a petition against the ongoing fossil fuel exploration in Black Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean, and received widespread support from Greece and Cyprus. I would like to start with a lesson I learned in the beginning of this campaign. The president of Erdogan announced that it had found fossil gas in Black Sea in August 2020, and this was a miracle for him, and it was a solution to all the problems of the people of Turkey. We petitioned against this exploration in Black Sea with 4 signatory organizations from Turkey, but didn't have international support because there were no previous relations like we had in Greece and Cyprus. So we know that persistent international networks are life-saving during the crisis period like we are in now. Thanks to Egehan and Nikos from Greece for keeping up these bridges for years on. The natural gas reserves in the Eastern Mediterranean have led to a new tension, as Egehan mentioned in her speech. And the growing tension has fueled the arms race in between the countries. The Don't Think campaign brought together nearly 70 ecological organizations from Turkey, Greece, Cyprus around the main theme of opposition. The theme was opposition to fossil fuels and war. And we draw attention to the risk of the vicious cycle in which natural destruction will lead to war, and the war will lead to natural destructions. The experiences of Greece, Cyprus, Turkey with natural gas exploration and extractions were very similar with many areas internationally. So many countries, the gazeteers and all sorts of networks supported our initiative also. Common problems make joint struggle even more meaningful and inevitable in this period. So 8 November 2020, the first international meeting. I need to put the charges to my telephone. Sorry, my computer wasn't working with Zoom. Okay. Yes, November 2020, the first international meeting of the campaign was held. And we set up an international coordination in that meeting. About 60 participants from Turkey, Greece, Cyprus were in the meeting. And decisions were taken to establish national coordinations in each country and plan simultaneous joint actions, make the main emphasis of the campaign anti-war and anti-mining. This international coordination was a part of COP26 in November 2021, Glasgow Alternative People's Summit, and from the start became a part of Global Day of Actions. And we were a part of joint actions in Greece, Cyprus, Turkey, in various times. In February 2022, the cancellation of the East Med project brought relief to all people in our region. Although the issue of fossil fuel extraction and the Greek-Turkish conflicts are not over, but we see the freezing of East Med's construction plans were a positive development. The main issue which brought us together was no longer a hot topic in our countries, but we continued to defend social justice and we continue to be part of the climate justice movement. We are sincerely interested in ecology and how we can create anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist policies. We are trying to develop concrete proposals on these issues. International coordination organized the first international conference in Istanbul, November 2022. Although 3 years have passed since its inception, we have learned a lot from the experience of Don't Think. We have experienced the benefits of international solidarity. We have understood the importance of common perspectives. We were very sad by our losses in the past 3 years, but our sadness didn't prevent us from fighting together against the distraction, the slowness of the search and rescue efforts during the earthquakes, wildfires, and the measures that need to be taken to prevent possible further disasters were not taken. We believe our most urgent need is to weigh a solidarity that crosses borders in order to keep alive our people in the entire geography affected by the earthquakes, all sorts of disasters caused by capitalist economic policies. We published many press statements in 3 languages, such as like Mediterranean storm Daniel, in the age of climate disaster, our lives are dispensable. That was the headline. The other headline in another statement, we said earthquakes know no borders, neither does our solidarity. We also made press releases against ecofascism, against gold mining industry, especially Eldorado Gold, and issued international calls for the Global Day of Actions. And last but not least, we are in the process of organizing international caravan from Istanbul to Thessaloniki. Selanik, we call it in Turkish. We will be in Thessaloniki 4 days against extractions and war with 16 comrades from Turkey, from at least 10 different organizations. There will be Romanian colleagues there also. We hope to strengthen this sort of solidarity work and networks with you also. And we are happy to be together with WIN. It is a good name, with Workers International Network. Thank you very much. That's it for now.
Thank you, comrades, for very informative and very interesting contributions. And it's interesting the way you can link fossil fuel extraction to national conflict and military activity, which is an important relationship to establish. And I wish your organization every success, and I hope you continue to grow, because it's an important intervention you're making, and especially the international aspects of what you're doing, arguing the case from the perspectives of all countries. So it's not simply just one isolated location. Now, the discussion is open for discussion. Anybody can speak, and try to keep your contributions concise to allow time for exchange and development of arguments in the course of the discussion. If you want to speak, can you indicate on the electronic signal by raising your hand electronically? And that way I can see which comrades want to talk. So it's now open for questions and for contributions. And during the course of the discussion, we'll come back again to the two speakers to ask, do they want to make further comments based on the points that have been raised in the discussion? So, Vera, your hand is up, so you're first.
Yes, I'm Vera, I'm from Greece, and I am from the Greek coordination of Kazma Bırak. In Greek, we call it σκάβουν το λάκκο, which actually means they are digging a hole for us, and it has a metaphorical meaning, and we use it if somebody tries to harm us, that is, they are ready to bury us, they are digging our grave. But because we think that these explorations are very harmful to the environment, to our economy, and also they are a threat for a war between the two countries, we consider it a danger. But at the same time, it means they dig a hole because actually they are digging holes. Anyway, Ece and the GDEM told you the idea of our working together. And I, as a Greek, want to say that our peoples do not have any enmity. They share the same problems, ecological, political, economical. And also our area is a seismic area. That is, there are a lot of earthquakes. And these explorations are very dangerous for our area because they do not dig a little. I mean, in order to find the hydrocarbon, they have to dig many meters at the bottom of the sea, and which is very dangerous because, as I told you before, we are a seismic area. Okay, this actually I live in Corfu, which is an island in the Ionian Sea. We do not have borders with Turkey. We have borders with Albany, sea borders, also with Italy. But there are also explorations here in the Ionian Sea. But for the time being, there is no threats for a war between Albania and Greece. But there has always been, unfortunately, a threat between Turkey and Greece. But we want peace because actually we are friends and we work together as people.
Thank you, Vera. No. Does any other comrade want to speak at this stage? Frank.
Just two questions. First, about how widespread is the awareness about climate change among the Turkish people? And the second question is Erdogan and the government in Turkey, are they climate change deniers like Donald Trump? Thank you.
Thank you, comrade.
Shall we answer now or should we wait?
Yes, by all means, yes, certainly. Yeah, if you wish.
I would prefer to wait till the end.
Okay. Okay. One of the arguments the comrades are raising is this link between the capitalist private interest of extraction and the public good of preventing further climate catastrophe. I mentioned at the beginning that the location where the COP28 is taking place in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, that country contains a massive state-owned oil exploration company which is expanding its production. So while they're discussing the importance of climate change targets, they're undermining their own case by expanding the company. So I'm sure that's true right across the entire fossil fuel industry, where the national interests are put ahead of global interests. Anyway, there's lots and lots of material to discuss there. Andros. Andros, you're muted.
Yes, okay, thank you, Finn. Well, I'll come in to say a few general things for the information mainly of our non-Greek, non-Turkish comrades and friends who are present. One thing I want to start, one general point is that at the same time as all governments are pretending to embark on policies to fight against the climate destruction or the climate crisis or climate change, they are investing heavily in hydrocarbons. And this is absolutely hypocritical. And it's not just the countries of, it's not just Cyprus, it's not just Turkey, it's not just Greece, it's not just Israel, which is also involved. It's the whole European Union, which is behind this project, although they have a contradictory position. Initially, they were very much in favor and they were funding it, but they began to have second doubts now because there are big discussions whether it's financially viable. But I mean, it's a contradiction in terms. They claim to be fighting against climate change, and then they invest heavily in extracting hydrocarbons from the seabed. The second thing is that when these deposits were initially discovered, well, or not discovered in the sense that it was proven, but when it was estimated that there would be deposits there of natural gas, the Greek and Cyprus governments, ruling classes, they thought that this was their opportunity to pressurize Turkey and force a kind of solution in relation to the Cyprus problem. So all of this is linked all the time to politics, to the national question, and to the national antagonisms between Greece and Turkey, and Cyprus and Turkey. And they thought they would be cornering Turkey by using their position in the European Union, because both Greece and Cyprus are members of the European Union. Actually, it brought the exact opposite results. Turkey reacted very strongly. They moved battleships into the areas where investigations were taking place. They forced multinationals like the Italian Eni and the US Exxon Mobil to leave and to stop excavations. And actually, on one occasion, the Greek and the Turkish battleships, they came very close to each other, and on one occasion, two battleships collided. And then in the end, the Greek side, that's Greece and the Cyprus, the Greek side, the southern Cyprus, which is the officially recognized state, they had to retreat. So actually, Turkey, the Turkish ruling class, imposed its terms in this case, but we came very closely to clashes. And in the past years, it was an open discussion in Greece, not so much in Turkey, but in Greece and Cyprus, it was that this thing could take us to war. Between Turkey was not going to accept that the hydrocarbons are just because the Turkish ruling class, there would be no way they would ever accept that the hydrocarbons around the island of Cyprus, that is southeastern Mediterranean, there was no way they would ever accept that it would just be a Greek game. They would have to have part of it. So that's two things to have in mind. The third point I would like to raise is that in the long past, that's in the 70s and in the 80s, the Greek left had strong relations to the Turkish left and also the Cyprus left. If we go back in the 60s, in Cyprus, the Greek and Turkish workers were united in the same unions and in one mass left party called AKEL. It was called Communist Party. With the capitulation of the Social Democrats, of the Social Democratic parties in the 80s, but particularly in the 90s and in the 2000s, and the collapse of the communist parties, and also the collapse, split, and capitulation of the communist parties in the whole region, this collaboration between the Turkish and the Greek left disappeared. When I say collaboration, I mean there were so many common initiatives, there were common concerts, there were common statements by mass forces of the left in Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey. And the left then was taking this initiative precisely because of the danger of nationalism and the danger of war. We have already experienced the war in 1974. But then in the 80s, this was weakened. In the 90s, it disappeared, particularly after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the left went through processes that most comrades are aware. So the fact that about 50 years after the war on Cyprus, which divided Cyprus, we have this initiative, Kazma Bırak, or leave it in the ground, don't dig it, or they're digging our grave, as is the Greek version of it. The fact that this initiative comes, and it comes from, I think initially it was 68 left radical environmental organizations initially. I think it's very important. There is no mass force behind it. There is no mass party. It's small forces of the left and local kind of environmental movements. Some of them are of a national character, but no mass party, no mass force behind it. And I think this is a sign, a symbol of the epoch in which we are living. But the main thing I want to stress is that despite the fact that there are no mass forces behind Kazma Bırak, I think it's a very important initiative because it brings back on the table the issue of international collaboration, class collaboration between Greek, Turkish, and Cypriot workers. I think that this, the last development with the caravan that will spend 4 days in Greece, and maybe it's a good idea if Jay and Gidem give us some more details about it for the information of everybody. But I think it's a really important development, and we need to keep it alive, and we need to invest on it for the future. Thank you, comments.
Thank you, Andros. Kieran had indicated he wanted to speak, but he's gone off my screen here. Is Kieran there? Okay, well, while we're waiting, Peter had indicated, so Peter, you can speak now.
Hi, thanks, comrades. I wonder if the speaker think there's any relation with what's going on in Gaza at the moment. The Israel apartheid regime is obviously deliberately ridding itself of Gaza completely. That would, of course, give Israel, I suspect, a bigger share of the spoils that lies in the Mediterranean Sea. I'm also aware, of course, that there are certain elements under the ground in the west of Palestine, and northern Gaza in particular, which would be lucrative to the Israeli regime. Could there be a possible connection as to why this final Nakba is taking place after all of these years because of what's been found in the Mediterranean? Thank you.
Peter?
Thanks, comrade.
Yeah. Has Kieran surfaced again? No. Okay. Does any other comrade want to speak at this point? Cheatham, do you want to comment on the points that have been made? Do you want
Start
to...
with Egehan. She comes from general picture. I'll go continue with the details. Egehan is floor yours. Thank you.
The first question was how widespread the climate change consciousness in Turkey. Actually, we can say in rural people, it's high because you can see by your eyes that the climate is changing, and it creates some economical results for the rural people, actually. So they are very aware of the climate change. Actually, they say climate change. They use the word ecological crisis very widespreadly. But when it comes to towns, cities, it's not like that. Actually, everybody knows about climate change. But people think that climate change is not the issue of Turkey at all. I mean, since they think it has very natural resources a lot, Black Sea is immune from climate change, and blah blah, things like that. I mean, like, you know, mystical, rhetorical, lots of discourses flying around. So the people in towns are not very aware of the seriousness of the climate change, but it's not the same with the rural people. And the enormous increase in the food prices, it's you know, like 70% each year increase in the prices of food in Turkey, which is very higher than the world mean increase in the world, which is 40%. So it make people question the climate change could be a serious issue, because there's a very high increase in the food prices. It's like almost a food crisis we are in. So it creates some kind of consciousness among people. And if Turkish government is climate change denier, yes, they are actually, as most of the states are greenwashing in this sense. I mean, they are not openly deniers like Trump, but they are greenwashing. Actually, they said they will decrease the carbon emissions around 41% until 2038. But they did the same before COP26, and they just said, okay, we said that we will decrease the carbon emissions, but now we don't think we can, and we will revise our target. So actually, those are just words, as we all know. They have no real action behind those words. So we all know that the Turkish government is also lying when they go to visit Dubai for a touristic reasons. They bring their lies with them, and when they turn back from the COP summits, they just forget what that they say about the carbon emissions, decreasing carbon emissions. And like all other countries, actually, they started to produce electricity cars. And they are trying to sell this like a preventions, one of the preventions to resist the climate change. Things are, like, as we all know, greenwashing and lies. And the thing about the details of the program of Selanik Caravan, we will go to a village of the gold mining has been done, which is around Halkidiki Gulf. And it's important for us because the company Eldorado Gold, a Canadian multinational, has also 3 gold mines in Turkey. One of them is in the Aegean coast. They have 3 gold mines, and we think that sharing our experiences, I mean, both triumphs and the retreats, is important. To learn from each other is important. We will visit the village. We will go to the gold mine area to protest Eldorado Gold and to talk with the villagers. Then we will be in Selanik, and we will organize a workshop to discuss the program of the next year, let's say. And we will meet with the people in Selanik from ecological organizations, and we hope that we will create much more concrete collaborations since we have a face-to-face relations with the people. We think it's very important to do something together face-to-face, and we will have this chance. Actually, I know that I forget some of the questions, but I'm sure that Çiğdem will complete my words.
Çiğdem.
Thank you. Thank you. We have, as general, do you hear me? Yeah. In terms of the government, the profile of the government, very similar to populist authoritarian regimes all around the world. Erdogan's regime, like one-man regime, yeah, he's trying to be hegemonic on every issue, on every front. And he's so big liar. He speaks against imperial powers. He speaks about environment. He says the climate is important, but he does the opposite. When, if you look at his actions and policies, he is ignoring the climate crisis, and that's a very interesting way. First, he was very proud to be a part of 20 developed countries in the world, and then when there was a pressure through the climate justice movements on the states where it is power, they think they are powerful, Western countries and developed countries, on decreasing their carbon footprint, decarbonize their economies. He turned his argument to say that, look, we are underdeveloped. We are not. The West owes us. And he didn't sign he signed, but he didn't imply that in the parliament. He didn't bring it to the Turkish parliament for years. Only recently he had to sign the Paris Agreement, and after this signature, all his policies and his government's policies is again the ignoring the necessity of cutting the coal and stopping the thermic power plants and things like that. Rather, he's in favor. They are in favor of being a part of international carbon markets. They are getting ready for this global marketing, and they are preparing a legal document to pass through the parliament. Anyway, our mood in terms of the public, how we feel as a part of public, is the opposition after the Gezi uprising in 2013 became demoralized. We couldn't get out of that demoralization, and the state and this authoritarian regime became stronger, and our leadership, our comrades are in the prisons, and youth are scared. There is no activity, independent activity, mass activity in the universities. There isn't an independent working class movement, strikes and things like that. So last 10 years, we are struggling to get the people together again, feel strong, and strengthen the solidarity networks. That's why this caravan came about. From the COP26, comrades were talking about a caravan project, but this was a kind of saving sheep for us. Like we are traveling all around for the last 2 years, all around Turkey to meet with people, help to Akbelen struggle, which they are being attacked by the thermal power plants owners. They are facing dynamites every day, every night, and their life threatened by the attacks. So not only Akbelen, we are a part of all the local people who are crying out for help. We have been there together, but we are not a mass movement. we are trying to increase the consciousness, like, but we know 80% of the public knows that there is a climate crisis, but knowing it is not enough. We say we are the part of the solution. We should fight the bosses and the government to stop this destruction. That's the general picture of the Turkish climate justice movement and the government's position. About Palestine, I would like to say a few things. Now, what happened in terms of why now there is a new second Nakba? That was the question, I think. What happened? I think the attacks in Palestine didn't start, or this big picture we see didn't start from 7th of October with Hamas attack to Israel. It just put a big light on the issue, how Palestinian people lived through for the last 70 years, since 1948, and why is the only solution is from the river to the sea, one democratic secular state in Palestine, and why we should support BDS, boycott, disinvestment, and we should break down the apartheid system in Palestine. I think this is a turning point, like Vietnam War, as you know. Vietnam, when there was an attack from Vietnam, the Shanghai, I think. What was the name of that attack? We call, anyway, I forget now the name of the attack. There was a big attack, and there was a shock. After that shock, we thought that Vietnamese people will lose, but it was opposite. International solidarity has increased. I believe that after this 7th of October, the second Nakba initiative will be stopped by international solidarity movement. Like in London, we see every Saturday, hundreds, thousands of people are marching, and we managed to stop, to give a ceasefire but it won't be enough. The ceasefire won't solve the problems. So we need to continue to fight against this imperial policies, which is supporting the Israeli massacre we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you, comrades. It's worth noting the insights that have been provided as to how to build a movement of this nature within a repressive regime that denies climate change, and the difficulties of organising in such circumstances. It's an important aspect of the discussion. John and Dominic have indicated so.
It's Dominic. Yeah, I think part of my question is partly redundant in what the comrade previously said, because I wasn't fully aware of how, if you like, emasculated the working class seemed to be in Turkey. But I think the thing to me is that the capitalists, the international capitalists, always sing us a song that we're going to be better off with their developments. Everything they do is for our good and so on. And yet everywhere you look, they're either destroying the planet or destroying the living standards of the working class. You know, all this wealth that's been produced, all it's leading to, as far as the working class is concerned, is more poverty, more dependent on charitable funds to keep your people alive, you know, like food banks and the rest of it. I was going to ask what's the basis, or you know, the orientation towards the working class? Clearly it's there, but is there any real potential? Is there any sort of organizations at grassroots level that you can reach that are looking at this not just from a climate change thing? Because a climate change thing, to my mind, is all about getting rid of the capitalist system. You'll never control it while the capitalists are in charge, because all they're concerned about is increasing their wealth, increasing their profits, and they've got no sight to the future. Maybe when the world is burning up, they'll all move to Mars, as Elon Musk wants them to do. But I mean, being serious about it, it is a question of building with the working class. It's not just a question of living standards. It's not just a question of the old trade union sort of things about, you know, wages and so on. It is the whole question of where the human race is going to be and where the working class are going to be in the future. And I think I was just wondering, is there any routes that you can build with organisations? I would have thought there must be some, even if they're not flying the banner of a trade union, of workers' organisations. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Dominic. I'd like to welcome Roger to the meeting there. Just see him crop me up on the screen. Kieran, do you still want to speak? You'd indicated earlier and then you disappeared off the screen. Kieran. Okay, still no response. Right, Jimmy, you're there.
Okay, I'm going to come in here on something that may sound heretical, and that is that I appreciate and recognize the contribution that combustion fuels have made to humanity. That timber, coal, gas, oil have all been beneficial at various stages of the history of humanity. They have developed methods of heating, methods of transport, methods of allowing for efficient process and manufacture of goods, and all it was good. And I find it very, very hard to argue historically against it. But what I do accept also is that it has been at a price, and the price are the chickens that are coming home to roost today in terms of the environmental and climate conditions, where the benefits of the past have created byproducts which have saturated the beneficial planet that we had before industry historically started to develop. But the other thing that we also have to recognize is that the process of history have been beneficial to communities as well as to individuals. And I'm looking very parochial here in that I'm looking at Ireland, that as recent as 50 years ago, we were a backwater, industrial backwater, small industry, small time manufacturing, and not very efficient housing, not very efficient heating, national heating. And then gas came ashore. It was discovered in the Atlantic and it was brought in. And as the gas pipelines crisscrossed the country, industry followed, jobs followed, people's living standards went up. And all this was beneficial. And it would be foolish to deny that it wasn't. It was beneficial. But again, it was limited. The Kinsale gas head has run dry. And another major gas head, the Corrib one, out in the Atlantic, in the west of Ireland, has come ashore. But the benefits have not benefited the community in Ireland because the profits are going abroad. Effectively, even the gas is just passing through on its way somewhere else. By way of metering, while some of it may be used here, the charges are going to private industry, to private banks, to private investors. The other problems that we have is that we talk about the question of replacing it. What happened in the coal industry on a world scale was a disaster for the working classes involved in fuel extraction. The mining communities, Britain is the classic example, where Thatcher's government hammered hell out of the mining industry, coal mining industry, and left whole communities totally destroyed, transformed from isolated but self-sufficient to some degree communities, to just deserts, no work, no support, disastrous. And we have one comrade on this list who is very, very adamant that Paul was beneficial to Britain. And I can understand that, because his community was vibrant, it was alive, people had jobs, they had resources to educate their kids. That's all gone, simply because it was removed. But it was removed and not replaced. Now, I have an experience in this, in that I spent the last 30 years working as a combustion engineer, which meant my job was to burn oil, to burn solid fuels, to burn coal, to burn peat, and to burn gas. And the challenge that I faced on a daily basis was to do so efficiently. Now, efficiently meant to try and extract the most heat out of the fuel, generally to turn it into steam for use in industrial production, but also to work within parameters set for what goes up the chimney, that there were limits on what carbon dioxide, all the hostile gases, all had to be monitored, had to be registered, and breaches of it risked the owner of the plant, the prosecution, and if we failed, it meant persecution for us, in that we weren't acceptable as appropriate engineers. The big problem now is that the argument has been adopted worldwide that there are many, many, many people on the planet now who are convinced that climate change is something that is going to be a threat to humanity. But the next problem that runs with that is, what the hell are you going to do to replace it? Are we going to create more coal communities and create deserts? Are we going to shut factories because they produce their steam by gas? Or are we going to go to the atomic powers? Or are we going to concentrate on electricity and the particular formations of electricity? It has to be planned. There has to be a plan, not just within the communities, within the nations, but there has to be an international plan. Now, the role of the trade union movement has been to raise the demand for just transition. But it's, from what I can see of it, it's only a slogan. It's not a reality. Just transition is something that means that people who have currently jobs at the expense of the combustion industries, that their jobs will be replaced by jobs which will give them the same value, at least, as to what they're earning, the same social standing that they have. Instead, what it appears to be is just destruction. And they'll use an example of that. In the 1920s, the early Irish government set up the idea of creating its own national electricity, but it also set up a program of exploiting peat, turf, a natural resource left to us by 9,000 or 10,000 years of nature. On the surface, easy to extract and easy to use for power stations. Not the most efficient fuel, not as efficient as coal, but nevertheless, the extraction process was easy. Power stations were built around Ireland and fed into the national electrical grid that had been established. And it was good, because it took Ireland from the Stone Age to the modern age over a period of 50, 60 odd years. In recent years, the peat industry was considered to be one of the hostile industries to the environment. And it was dropped. It was dropped like a brick. People lost their jobs. Power stations closed. The peat extraction industry just shut down. But you had the ironic thing that one of the benefits of peat and its variations was in the agriculture industry and in the home heating industry, peat briquettes. And what we found was that the National Board Namona, the turf body, it shut down basically its power generation industry. And Lidl and Aldi, the European, the German companies, have replaced them. And the way they've replaced them is every week there are lorries, diesel lorries, travelling from Germany to Ireland, full of peat briquettes for sale in the Lidl and Aldi shops. Now, if somebody can convince me there was an argument to replace the briquette industry by putting it on lorries travelling thousands of miles, I don't see the reality of that. There's no planning there. An industry that was existing, that was keeping communities viable, was shut down, but there was nothing to replace it except extract the fuel at a longer and more environmentally expensive cost by stuffing it in lorries and bringing it from Germany. There are other possibilities. The possibilities are generation, wind generation. We have plenty of wind in this country, there's no doubt of it. We have seas with some of the highest tidal ranges in the world. But there is little or no investment in the tidal industries. There is investment in the wind industry, but to a large degree, most of it is private investment. And again, the benefits are not necessarily going to the state because the state has just been charged for it. But the point is that there are ways of regenerating. Now, for example, in the industry that I was in, steam boiler, the steam boiler is now starting to reappear, not as a gas boiler, not as a coal boiler, not as an oil boiler, but as an electric boiler. It's going back to a very, very primitive technology in terms of the engineering, but it's working, provided you have a cheap source of the electricity and a guaranteed source of it that is not causing more problems for the atmosphere. It is possible to do these things. And there is possible also on the nuclear end, on the so-called safe technology, which hasn't yet been developed, but resources could be put into it and it could be developed safe. It doesn't have to be split in the atom. What I wanted to just conclude on is that there is a huge responsibility and a huge challenge to make the just transition, not a slogan, but a reality. And that's going to have to come down to the international organizations of the working class. And they are the trade unions and the so-called labor movements, political movements. There will have to be a plan developed, because other than that, it's going to finish up with anarchy. And the private companies, extortionists, the private families of the Gulf, these are going to continue making their profits. They're going to continue extorting. They're going to continue with the wars for possession and ownership. So I'll just finish on that. The real demand now has to be for a world plan for energy under the influence and under the control of the working class.
Thank you, Jimmy. Very important points there. Welcome back, Kieran. Do you want to make a contribution? You had indicated earlier on that you wanted to speak. Kieran.
Yes, thank you, Finn. I was here before, but I couldn't speak. I was muted and I couldn't unmute myself. So very good introductions. It's a very inspiring campaign. And clearly it's essential that we participate in this type of work if we're to win, especially young people, to socialism. Because for young people, the environment is often the most important issue in their lives and the one that motivates them to become involved in politics. But I just want to make some points, which theoretical points in a sense, and I guess in a way they relate to some of the points that Jimmy's just made and other speakers too. And it's about the nature of capitalism and the relationship between capitalism and environmental degradation or the despoilation of the planet. Now, we know what capitalism means. You know, capitalism is about profit. It's about extraction of surplus product. But it's not very much else. You know, there's little else that is actually organic to capitalism and, you know, of fundamental importance to capitalism. So I think we need to be careful and not to miseducate a new layer of youth in the sense that we argue that the problems of global warming and all the other problems affecting the planet can only be addressed under socialism. when young people often see with their own eyes, especially in the advanced capitalist countries, that the capitalist class are taking steps to counter global warming. And there are reasons for that. Firstly, the ruling class isn't a single block. You know, it very seldom in history does it operate as a single class in the sense that everyone turns together, marshaled by one general. And there are significant layers of the ruling class who have decided that they have to move in the direction of green energy, for example, and they do mean it. You know, we have to accept that sometimes. You know, the ideologues of the ruling class draw conclusions and they follow through in their conclusions. So they are beginning to take those steps. And we also understand or need to remind ourselves that the capitalist class, always acting in its own interests, will sometimes take steps or move in a direction that is, at least in part, in the interest of the working class. And I think there are good parallels from a century and a half ago in the mid-19th century, when the capitalist class in the advanced capitalist countries began to develop what we now call the welfare state, or, you know, socialized or nationalized education systems, healthcare systems across the advanced capitalist world. And the capitalist class did that not out of goodness, not for any romantic reason, but because they understood that if they were to further their own interests, they required educated workers and they required healthy workers. And in a similar way, a century and a half later, they can draw the same conclusions, that in order to maximize profits, they are required to take certain steps which protect the planet, protect natural resources. And of course, in doing so, they make a profit, just like they make a profit from health and education. They will make a profit from renewable energy. So I think some of the propaganda of the left, and I don't mean comrades here, but in a more general sense, it's too blunt, it lacks nuance, and then it doesn't, you know, jars with the actual lived reality of young people in the advanced capitalist world. Now, I think it is different in the global south and in parts of the world that are left behind, in the sense then that the global despoilation, degradation of the environment is absolute, and little it happens to counter that. But I think we just need to take care about how we pitch our propaganda. So we make similar points as we do about health and education. Because health and education, you know, nationalized health and education exists in many places, but it's under-resourced and it's been cut back because of the crisis of capitalism. So we have to make more nuanced points. And then my final point is one about science and technology. In the 1970s and the 1980s, much of the left, I think, had a position of opposition to nuclear power, which was mistaken. Not that opposition wasn't a position that could be arrived at for rational reasons, but often comrades suggested that opposition to nuclear power was a principle, a socialist principle, whereas it never was and never will be. Nuclear power is a technology, it's a scientific method. We're not opposed to it per se, but we may choose to oppose its implementation or its development at certain times in history or in certain places. So, for example, in Turkey, the comrades mentioned, and Egypt, the development of nuclear power stations. I don't know the local circumstances, but it may be correct to oppose the development of nuclear power stations. But I think we need to be careful not to say we are opposed to nuclear power as a technology. So, for example, after a successful world socialist revolution, if it required an emergency program of building nuclear power stations in parts of the world that have been left behind by capitalism in order to take society forward by 50 years or 100 years, in 5 years or 10 years, as socialists, we would choose that option, I believe, even though we're very well aware of the potential downside of nuclear power. Would we ask people to wait for renewable energy or if we knew that nuclear power could catapult living standards forward in a very short period of time? Now, my comment is maybe already becoming a little bit historic in the sense that green technology is developing so quickly, but we just need to be careful not to be seen to be anti-science or not to recognize that capitalism is a more nuanced system than sometimes we allow for. The key question is profit. For capitalism, profit is what matters. And sometimes that might mean to take certain steps, even in the conditions of crisis that are favorable. That could still happen. And for us, the key issue is one of control. So it's control of the system, control of all industry, and control of the nuclear power industry, control of the extractive industry, such as the oil industry, and control of the renewable energy industries. And when we have control, then of course everything changes and change very quickly. But there are just, there are detailed points around our approach that we need to take care around, I think.
Thanks, Kieran. There's two questions I just want to raise myself, just see, could I hear comments from the two main speakers? First of all, there's a revolution happening at the moment in the world in terms of renewables, the solar and wind power, and huge efforts being made to replace fossil fuel usage with renewables. Is there any discussion of that in the countries that you mentioned, specifically Turkey? Is there a discussion about renewables and their viability? And the second question is there any opposition to government, Turkish government in particular, climate policy being expressed by workers' groups, community groups, NGOs, professional organizations, academic groups? Is there an opposition in the country from any of these types of organizations to government policy? There's just two questions I'd like to hear comment on. I noticed that John and Dominic's hand is up again. Is that their legacy issue? Or do you want to speak again? No. And Jimmy's hand is still up as well? Or was? It's gone. Okay. Now, we're kind of getting, I suppose, towards the closing section of the meeting. So if other comers want to speak, they need to indicate now and make their comments fairly concise and brief. So the other comers want to speak. Yeah, Dominic. You're muted.
Yeah. I am now. Yeah, no. I just it's Jimmy's points that I'm commenting on, but I totally agree with him. We need a plan. But the whole question is, how do you get a plan? As I see it, you've got a situation in the world where production is social, wealth and anything on the earth that's produced is produced socially. The social production, workers unite in factories, in offices, in God knows where. But the private ownership of what they produce is the issue. Because getting them together, to the capitalists to get together to do a plan, I mean, they must be all aware of the crisis that's coming to us with climate change. I mean, the figure that should be arrived at in the target of the conferences is 1.5%. That's now 3%. That's going to mean devastation in parts of the world that we've not seen so far. The level of devastation is going to be increasing. What you're getting is cuts on the margin. They'll do this bit, they'll do that bit, but they're not doing anything in a planned way to produce it, because you've got major factors controlling governments, like in America, the oil, coal, and other conglomerates got Trump into power in a big way, with all this talk of jobs and going back to the old industries. And we're not going back to the old industries in any significant way. As far as Britain was concerned with the mines, it wasn't a question of coal, it was a question of the organised working class. The government here, Thatcher government, went out to destroy organised labour. And that's what they did to a great extent. Following that, there used to be 3 million engineering workers, organised engineering workers in Britain. Where are they now? They're destroyed because they wanted to get rid of the organised working class, the enemy within, as Thatcher put it. In the 70s, in my union, the president, a guy called Mike Cooley, was working at Lucas Aerospace. And Lucas Aerospace were drawing up plans for alternative production for people working in the coal industry, people working in what do you call it, nuclear power, about replacing their jobs, their skills that they had into other skills, talks of needs of technical machines for hospitals and elsewhere. I haven't got the full details in my own factory. We were looking at, we were producing turbine generators that were powered by either coal, oil, or nuclear power. We were looking at ways of wind power, wave power particularly, that were things for the future. the argument against nuclear has got nothing to the fact that it's a modern technology. It's the absolute pollution that's left behind by it, that's picked up at the moment by the working class. The companies that run it just walk away from the power stations. So it's a question of what is organised and what can be planned. And the working class, in my view, together are quite capable of organising. We heard last week, I think it was last week, the auto workers, they're recruiting in universities. The working class has been, you've got layers that were unorganised and were not even considered as workers, are now joining the trade unions, lawyers, university lecturers, and all the rest of it. The working class, people have been crushed into the working class, and the whole thing about two classes on the face of the earth, the spectre of the working class and the horror of the capitalist class. So it's very garbled, but it does come back to this question of social production being for social need and not for profit. And that's the fundamental. And how you teach that and how you organise with that. To think that socialists are against, if you like, progress with science, it seems to me a major contradiction that we're supposed to be scientific socialists, that you'd be against science. It's not dogma, it's what we can achieve. And the whole question is how you plan that and how workers will plan it in the future if we achieve socialism. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Dominic. If there are no further contributions, there don't seem to be, we'll ask our two speakers.
Did that make sense?
Is there somebody? Okay, so just before we get the final speakers, and the two comrades can speak in a moment, I want to thank the two main speakers for their opening contributions, which were very stimulating and very interesting. I want to thank the comrades also for the contributions they've made in a thoughtful and considered way, and the discussion has been very fruitful. The speakers have come, as you can see, from a range of different countries, which is a feature of WIN discussions now, and the information we've picked up in this discussion, we can bring back to our respective countries and organisations and broaden the level of understanding and of consciousness within workers' organisations. Now, I would now invite the two speakers, Cheatham and Ikam, to see if they have any final concluding comments to make about the general discussion that is taking place. So it's up to you, comrades.
Yeah, I'm starting to them.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
You go first and then me. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the contributions. I learned a lot actually, and it's also stimulating for me, and I will try to think about those things in the coming days, and maybe we can write down something, I don't know. But there were some questions. The first one was like, how do we link our work to the working class issues, agenda of the working class? Actually, I should say that Kazma Bırak campaign also caused a building of the Climate Justice Coalition of Turkey. We called for ecology organizations to organize a coalition between us to strengthen the local movements. Actually, it's one of the first aims, and we did it. And the almost maybe the first things, actually, we also did this with the Kazma Bırak, but we visited, actually, we have invited trade union leaders to our meetings, and we discussed them with the relations between labor and ecology. And for the first time in Turkish history, we published a press release whose title was "There is an ecology in May 1st." And it was, it was like to put agenda of the trade unions, that the ecology issues, and we did something. Actually, we created an atmosphere which takes the ecology issues more serious, actually. And we also have, as Climate Justice Coalition, a labor working group. And we have trade union advisors and executives in that group. And we are trying to force the labor organizations to practically include the issues of ecology. I mean, for example, in their collective agreements, blah, blah. And we like to see them in the struggle with us, since the issue is affecting the working class mainly from the perspective of climate justice. And I should add that the Turkish oppositional organizations like professional associations and trade unions are mostly aware of the climate change because of COVID-19. Actually, we discussed in Turkey COVID-19 around the issues of deforestation and cruelty against animals, blah, blah. So it was like it opened the door for most of the sections of the labor organizations to take climate change and ecological crisis in their agenda. And the only issue of energy resources, actually, I think that the first question we should ask to ourselves is that, why do we need that energy resource? I think we should first answer this question. What are we gonna do with this energy, actually? Do we need that for factories, for profit, for overproduction? Or do we need this energy for better lives? Actually, this should be the first question, I believe. Then we should defend the energy resources should be under the collective property. They should be commons, and they should be they should defined as commons, and they should the control over energy resources should be under the workers' control, and there should be class-based decisions, especially on renewable energy, and we should depend on the renewable and clean energy. And I don't mean nuclear as a clean energy that's being discussed around nowadays. When it comes to renewables, some comrades called it a revolution, and there is a discussion in Turkey for a long time about the renewables, but there's not only a discussion, but there's also a movement against renewables in Turkey, and lots of small local movements against renewables. Because, for example, when you take wind power, it creates noise over it, very high noise, and it creates vibrations all the time, which can cause some, soil loss, let's say. I don't know the technical term. And it caused the changing the migration routes of the birds. And these are the first three things that came into my mind. And people are against wind power in Turkey. I mean, if they put wind power I don't remember the word, in their villages, they are struggling against that wind power. That's why we should decide collectively what we need and where to put them in terms of renewables. And there is an opposition against the AKP's energy policy and climate policy in general. But actually, they have no they have no climate policy, and as I tried to say, they are trying to produce electricity cars, things like that, and they're greenwashing. And the opposition knows that they are greenwashing, and we need something more concrete, more, you know, more concrete, let's say, policy against the climate change. I do agree with the international plan is needed for the just transition, and it should be under the workers' control. So I'm trying to check my notes, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again, comrade. Okay, Cheatham, you can make the final comments on the discussion.
Okay. Now I found my word. It was TED offensive. I was trying to compare the Palestinian 7th October Palestinian resistance against the Israeli attack, and I am trying to say that that could have an effect, a radicalizing effect in youth movement and working class movement because of the weaknesses of imperialism. Seeing it anyway, and especially I'm happy to see the youth climate justice activists taking position on war and defending, being in solidarity with Palestine. The other thing was workers' just transition and the workers' movement in Turkey. Now, as you see, when the reformist arguments filled by the capitalist boundaries and that conceptualization have an effect on radical left, and they want to, they say that they label this as bourgeois solutions and false solutions, but trade union movements haven't started to talk about any transition. We are pushing them. We have an ecology and labor network, as Ejahan said, and we had recently a meeting about 20-something comrades together, and we decided to have a common perspective on ecology and labor, and we will be working next month with Ejahan about bringing the trade unionists together in one perspective, we hope. But just transition will be critical for us in terms of how trade unions are using it in Europe. Anyway, but in terms of nuclear power, we believe this is really false solutions to the climate crisis, one of the false solutions, and it's very dangerous. And we, as Kazma Bırak, Don't Dig campaign, we are a part of a campaign against the nuclear power plants, especially being set up in Turkey, which is very close to Cyprus, in Mersin, Akkuyu, and it is very dangerous. So we are a part of anti-nuclear movement, we see. In terms of the renewable energy, we are critical also because how it's being used by the capitalists, and this is very, we believe that this is a toplumsal problem, how I am going to say it, Can. It is a problem of society, how the system itself. And without the system change, you can't find a technological trick to solve this climate problem. So we upheld the system change, not the climate change, as an important slogan. That's it, really. And there are so many things we can talk, but for one meeting, that will be enough from me. Thank you for letting me speak in this meeting also. And thank you to Ecehan for calling me as a co-spokesperson.
Thank you, Cheatham, for a very illustrative and very interesting couple of contributions, and likewise to Ecehan for her contributions and to the other comrades. Now, these WIN discussions, Workers' International Network discussions, happen every Sunday afternoon on a range of topics. So we'll inform you by email about the meeting next week and the discussion, the topic of the discussion. I don't know if Pam wants to say something about next week. Is Pam still there? Pam.
Yes, hello. Yeah. Well, next week we've got Marco speaking on Italy, but I have no details yet. I'm waiting for those to come, but I will send the email out about midweek, so look out for that. Okay.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay.
So with that, just watch your emails for information about next week's discussion, and we hope to see you all then.
Can you check your spam boxes as well? Because we've recently started to use a new address and some people haven't seen the notifications straight away. So just check your spam boxes.
Oh, yes. Good idea. Just make sure that the email isn't lying in some secret file somewhere. Okay, so thanks again to the speakers who did a very good job and a very interesting discussion. So good night, comrades, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye, comrades.
Good night. I'm coming to Thessaloniki as well.